welcome to Money Matters. I'm Jim Butler with Marcum Wealth, and I am joined here with my colleague Mike Dever of Brandywine Asset Management. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
So as we move into the show, we certainly will have a lot to talk about. We're going to shift gears quite a bit from normal market conversation with our guest, our unique guest this afternoon. But one thing that, certainly we like to mention at the outset is the timing of when this show airs is not indicative of anything going on in the markets currently. It's more, call it 2023. And with that in mind, you and I spoke earlier with regards to a little bit of a strategy that your firm has developed to really address a concern that I think enters most investors' mind at some point, which has to do with risk and risk mitigation. So what can you share with us to start out with regards to what Brandywine actually has had success with?
Well, we've taken an approach, and something that we've developed over it's built out of the last 40 years of Brandywine's existence and trading. We were approached a little while back by a large consulting firm that was looking for ways to mitigate what they refer to as sequence of return risk, which is the problem that people have when they're saving for retirement and then going into retirement, where they may enter retirement when they're starting to withdraw some of their money in a bear market. And the timing of the withdrawals and the timing of the bear market can have significant impact on how much money they actually have left to use in retirement. So we worked out a model, which we call risk replacement, that's led into 14 different strategies that people can use in 401k plans, other qualified pension plans, that help to mitigate that risk.
So is this a strategy that everyday investors can access, or I'm a little ahead of ourselves with that question, but maybe as you get into it a little bit more with regards to how it works, maybe shed some light on how our listeners might be able to either take advantage of it or follow your lead.
Yeah, so these are funds that we've structured that are entered into 401k plans. So it's really the plan sponsor or the plan consultant or advisor that directs which funds are going to be available in each plan. And if they make that available in the participants' plans, the people that we're talking with, they're watching the show now, they're able to invest into these funds. If they don't have it in there, they can request it from their advisor, and they'll get in touch with us, and we'll talk about incorporating those into their plans. To give you a quick example, I have a slide here that shows the reason kind of behind doing something like this, which is adding some protection in a portfolio, is people look at insuring their house as just something that's a matter of fact, and the vast majority of people do that. But the probability of a house fire is actually very, very small. But the probability of a equity bear market is quite large. I mean, the probability of having a couple of those a decade is almost a certainty. And you can lose a substantial amount of your assets when that occurs. I understand the process of just riding through it and coming out on the other side of the bear market, but there's also an advantage in addition to what I mentioned earlier with sequence of return risk by mitigating those losses in those bear market periods. And if you look at the second slide, you can see by reducing the amount of loss in a portfolio, recoveries are naturally able to start from a higher level. So this is just giving an example of something like the financial crisis, where the S&P lost 50% of its assets. NASDAQ was far worse, actually. And if you're able to constrain those losses when those recoveries occur, you're recovering from a higher level. Instead of losing half your assets and needing to make 100% just to get back to even, that 100% return may produce 30, 40, 50% in new profits in your portfolio. So there's a lot of reasons why mitigating losses can add to the value in a portfolio over time.
Sure. So I think one of the questions that I'm asking is if I'm a participant in a 401k plan and they don't have a tool available like this, should I be trying to do this on my own, or should I reach out to a firm like yours to understand more? Or, what thoughts do you have? I'm sure you get that question from time to time, just from folks that you come in contact with.
We do, absolutely. So we got a call from a large technology firm from an employee, a plan participant, asking if he could use our funds and access those within his plan. Uh, we weren't set up on that plan. But what we advised him to do, and when in the process we're going through right now, is he puts us in contact with the benefits people at the firm, and we work through the process of getting these funds approved for use in that plan, so that he can then select them as a participant in his portfolio.
So in that case, they have a conversation potentially that would allow them to utilize a strategy such as what you're touching on. In other cases, let's say somebody who might be employed but isn't a participant in a plan, or is self-employed and they have a self-employed pension, or they just fund their own IRA on a regular basis, or even the folks that are retired. The challenge of addressing risk, again, I think is top of mind for most people, and particularly since, a bear market does occur once every 5 to 6 years. So it's something that, we want to be sensitive to as we advise our clients.
Right. What we do. There are different ways that people can mitigate risk. What we do is probably a little more complex than what the average investor would be able to do. We came out of more of the hedge fund world, advising high net worth and institutional investors, and we can still do that and help create portfolios and put the protection in these portfolios for larger investors. But we're really talking about $10 million client portfolios on up. So on the smaller end, the only way that they're going to really get access to what we're doing is to have us be added into their plan as an option. And that's something that we're working on extensively. We're meeting with a lot of people. We're having a lot of calls and discussions right now to get these different funds and incorporated into other pension plans. It won't work. What we do is not available in IRAs, but it is available in almost any other qualified pension plan.
Right. Well, what's interesting, Mike, is that there are tools out there that I would think even many 401k participants are not aware of. And as you say, may want to have a conversation with the people who manage their 401k plans to see if they, might be able to incorporate a strategy like this.
Yeah, that would be our hope. Because I can show you on the next slide. I mean, what this does, and this is where it really comes into the probability of having problems in retirement when you're withdrawing money. Without kind of this strategy, you'd have that, as we showed, that initial probability of an 80% probability of a bear market in a 10-year period. That's reduced to almost a third with this process, which we call risk replacement. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that the probability of you entering into retirement when you're in that withdrawal stage, you've got a lot less probability that you're going to have a significant drawdown or loss of capital. And that's really the biggest risk people have with savings, is they may save great, but when they start pulling that money out, if they enter into a bear market, they're taking a higher percentage of the assets out of the portfolio because the portfolio is smaller. And the end result then, in the final slide can show, is you can actually end up then with more money in retirement. And that's, in the end, that's what it gets down to, is what do you have to spend? What's available to you to spend? And this is just showing if you started with $10,000, instead of losing it all or half of it, in this case, in a big bear market, and having to recover from that, you lost only a fraction of that. So in the end, you just end up with a higher level because you have much less loss to recover from.
Right. Well, from that last chart, I think I like the blue bar a whole lot better. So I'll be looking for that next time I'm shopping for a strategy in the 401k plan.
It sounds great, Jim.
So one other quick comment before we get to our question. It has to do with the challenge that I think investors have, 401k participants and outside of retirement plans, is timing. Oftentimes we'll hear questions or comments with regards to, well, I need to get out of the market. I'm nervous about what may happen, or they need to reduce my equity exposure. One piece of information I ran into recently is that if we go back to the S&P 500 from October 2011 to May 2015, so little under a 4-year time period, there were no corrections. Now, we talked about bear markets occurring every 5 years or so. Annually, on average, over the past 50 years, as you know, the S&P tends to dip about 14%. That doesn't mean it ends the year down 14, but average dip in any 12-month, annual 12-month time period. In that 4-year window from 2011 to 2015, there were no annual dips, but yet the S&P 500 went from 1,100 to 2,100. And that's about not quite a 100%, doubling of the value of a dollar. But if you decided in 2011 or 2012 that the market was choppy and you wanted to get out, then an investor would miss that run of the increase in the S&P. So timing becomes very difficult, and a strategy like yours helps to take that decision making off
Absolutely.
the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost impossible over a long period of time to time the market correctly. You might hit it once or twice, but all you need to do, is an example you just gave there, is miss one turn, and you give up half your profits potentially. So what we do is these funds that we have are invested 100% of the time. They just have some protection on there to help out if the market does have a bear market entry, but you don't want to be sitting there trying to time the market, because it's virtually impossible to do that with any kind of the level of accuracy you need to make the returns worthwhile.
Right. Well, that's a really good lead into our question. We have a gentleman who sent in a question. Ralph Thomas in Philadelphia simply asked, "How do you handle risk?" So, in complement to our discussion, how would you answer that, Mike?
Right. Okay. So I talked a little bit about how we do it, but how individual investors should handle risk, and people that have advisors like you consulting with them. It's really through portfolio diversification. And I wrote a book in 2011 that talks a lot about portfolio diversification through that. And it's finding different investments that can offset each other at different times in their cycles, so that you're not all subject to the same risks at the same time. And that is something that individual investors can do. They can, working with advisors, certainly they can do that to select portfolios that help smooth the returns over time. That'll help tremendously in reducing risk.
So, in other words, it doesn't need to be complicated. You can keep it really simple and make sure you follow a path of diversification.
You can do that, yes.
Yeah, good point. So, thanks very much for that insight, Mike.
Absolutely.
And if you have a question that you'd like our panel to address, potentially get aired, this is how you communicate with us.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, "Send us your questions." While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Welcome back. And now it's time for our special guest. And we have gentleman Nick Imbesi with the Chester County Food Bank. Welcome, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So there's going to be some people who know what the Chester County Food Bank is all about. I suspect some that may have an idea, and many who have no idea. So why don't we start with maybe just a brief intro as to your background and what Chester County Food Bank is all about.
Sure. Yeah, great. So I'm advocacy and government relations here at the Chester County Food Bank. We have a very large operation. We distribute about 3.5 million pounds of food per year throughout Chester County. We grow over 150,000 pounds of produce per year at 2 of our farms. And we're serving on average per year about 40,000 people. And to put that into perspective, Chester County is the wealthiest county in the Commonwealth. It's in the top 25 wealthiest counties in the nation. And we still see a very high need here in Chester County. Through our donors and financial support, and even purchasing our own food, we're able to meet that need.
Yeah, Nick, you
So
say,
are there
oh,
other
I'm sorry, go ahead.
areas within the Philadelphia area that you work with? In other words, is there a Philadelphia County food bank, Delaware County food bank, and so on?
Yeah, so we're actually, it gets a little political, but there's Feeding America, and they're the national hunger relief organization for the country. And then Feeding America has Feeding America food banks. We are what's called a PDO of Philabundance, which is a partner distribution organization. We have a great relationship with Philabundance. And so we work directly with Philabundance, who's a Feeding America food bank, to get the job done here in Chester County. They provide us some support, and we provide service in their service area. So we have a very good collaboration with Philabundance. Philabundance also serves Delaware County, Montgomery County, Bucks County, and I believe they serve a couple counties in South Jersey as well.
So how has demand for the food assistant changed? I mean, how long have you been doing this, and have you seen any recent changes in it? And what specific programs, initiatives are you doing as Chester County Food Bank? You have in place to address food insecurity?
Yeah, so with inflation, everyone's felt the pinch. We've actually seen our demand increase over 26% here at the food bank year over year. And in addition, we've seen donated food plummet. A lot of that has to do with individuals who are going to the grocery store to do their shopping. They're having a hard enough time buying food for themselves, let alone enough to donate to the food bank. So that's really caused us to purchase more of our own food. About 15% of the food that we distribute out to our partner agencies, which is about 150, 160 of them throughout the county, only about 15% of it is, what you would call government food. A lot of it is from a program called TFAP, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. So it's really donated food, purchase food, and government food that we rely on. To answer your other question, I've been here for about a year. My background is in municipal government. I was a municipal manager for many years. And my direct role here at the food bank is government relations. So to that point, one of the things that we do to try to address food insecurity is my role, which is education. We talk with lawmakers, we educate them on the realities of what's happening in Chester County. Because, like I said, there's this misconception that just because we're the wealthiest county in the Commonwealth doesn't mean that we don't have food insecure families and individuals in Chester County. And so it's really a collaborative effort with our local officials, state officials, federal officials, and local businesses and organizations here to get the job done.
So, Nick, is there much collaboration within the private sector, such as different sized business organizations to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we belong to all the chambers of commerce in Chester County. I personally sit on the government affairs councils or committees for many of them, and we really try to engage the businesses for a couple different reasons. One, they're great sponsors. We depend heavily on businesses to volunteer time with their employees and for financial support. We depend on those financial donations from businesses in order to meet the growing need here in Chester County. Another thing that we like to do is it's very important that we educate businesses on the realities here in Chester County. For example, a lot of people don't think that food insecurity and business goes hand in hand, but it really does. When you have employees showing up to food hungry, of course, they're not going to be as productive worker for your business. A lot of aspects that affect food insecurity also affect businesses. For example, here in Chester County, we're having an affordable housing crisis that's ongoing. And when you are trying to retain workers, but they're not able to find a place to live that's affordable, that can really start to hit the bottom line of your business when you're not able to attain workers or skilled workers that you depend on. So it's really, those conversations that we try to have with the business community, that this really matters. But the thing is that we really appreciate is that a lot of businesses step up and they lend a helping hand to their neighbors, to make sure that we can meet this need here in Chester County.
I mean, that's great. I understand the emotional drive and why a business would participate, from just doing good. But
Mhm.
do you have any data? Is there something that shows how it actually affects economic growth or businesses or employee retention, or uh, how else can you appeal to these businesses to participate?
Yeah, so I don't have any exact data on that. The only data that we have is the actual numbers. So like a apartment, the average rent is $1,900 in Chester County. The average listing of a home, I attended a forum of a local bank the other day, and they had it at over $500,000 is the average listing for a home in Chester County. So when you're talking about uh, middle class workers or lower class workers, they're going to have a hard time affording a home here in Chester County, and it's going to drive people away from being able to move into the county to work. Another thing is in Chester County, we have a very high wage that's needed. For example, here in Chester County, in order to meet your basic needs, and I mean bare bones necessities, uh, an individual needs to make $17.87 an hour to meet those needs. So we're talking that it's a pretty higher pay that you would need in another part of the state, like a Clearfield County or things of that nature in the western or northern part of the state.
Interesting. Talk more about food supplies, or sourcing. So in other
Hmm.
words, where your food comes from. You touched on that a little bit
Yeah.
earlier when you had mentioned you have a couple of farms
Hmm.
uh, and donations. So certainly you have standards that you want met with regards to food that you take in and that food you grow.
Yeah, so we're very proud of this stat. About 52% of the food that we distribute is fresh produce. It's fresh food. And we're very proud of that. We're just not giving out canned food and things of that nature. We're providing fresh food. Um, there's three main ways that we get our food. One is through government programs, which makes up about 12 to 15% of the food that we distribute. A lot of it is through the program I mentioned earlier called TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and that gives us meats, dairies, things of that nature. Over 50%, and this is alarming to us because it used to be below 50%, and we are actually purchasing ourselves. We use funds that are donated to us through corporations, private individuals, foundations, grants, to purchase food that we can keep up with demand. And then the third is food that is donated to us. And as I said, that continues to decline is the donated food. And so this month, actually, September 2023, is Hunger Action Month, and we have a challenge to try to get as much donated food in the door as we possibly can. The good news is, as we go into the holiday season, um, our donations really pick up, but we really try to drive the point home that there's food insecurity year round. Um, in regards to your other point of your question, we also do have two farms, and we grow a variety of produce on them. Garlic to tomatoes to strawberries and cherries. We grow you name it, we pretty much grow it.
That's great.
Interesting.
Now, you're talking about food insecurity and purchasing food, and how how do you handle the role of volunteers, and how important is community engagement in helping with the operations of the food bank?
So it's very important. Our volunteers donate thousands and thousands of hours to us each and every year. There's many areas where individuals can donate volunteer here at the food bank. We have a processing kitchen, which we bring the produce in from the field. It's processed here at the food bank and gets ready for shipment. We also have a production kitchen, and we're producing thousands of meals out of our production kitchen. Programs like Meals on Wheels, Simple Suppers, things of that nature, and all this. If you need details on what these programs exactly are, you can go onto our website. But our volunteers do all this. So without our volunteers, we wouldn't be able to get the job done. We also have an area where we pack senior boxes and backpack programs for students who are facing food insecurity to get them by over the weekends. So we really depend on our volunteers to get this job done, and not to mention the farms. They're mainly ran by the volunteers. We do have 2 staff members on staff who work the farms, but without the volunteers, we wouldn't be able to get it done.
What are some of the profiles of the folks that you see suffering most from, call it, food insecurity? Are there demographics, I'm sure, that you tend to see more than others?
Yeah, so we see a lot of seniors here in Chester County who are facing food insecurity. But I have to be honest, it really doesn't discriminate. Really, anyone can be experiencing food insecurity in Chester County. The thing is, in Chester County, a family of 4 needs to make a little over $111,000 to meet their needs. And that's with 2 working adults, with 2 children, child care, housing, car payments, utilities, food. But to qualify for food assistance, you need to make a little under $55,000 a year. Okay. And so we call that the eligibility gap. So you have this large portion of the population who's making too much for food assistance from the government, but not enough to get by in Chester County. And this is a problem throughout the urban areas here in the United States. What we see a lot of is seniors, when they got that cost of living adjustment and their Social Security check, it put them just over the threshold for food assistance programs. So even though they got, I think it was a 7% increase in Social Security, it kind of bumped them out of the thresholds to have food assistance like SNAP from the state and federal government. So seniors especially are having a difficult time here in Chester County.
Well, I'm going to give a plug to the Chester County Food Bank. I happen to live in Chester County and frequent one particular Y. And I think it was a couple months ago, actually, Nick, they had a food drive/competition where the Ys were striving to, softly outdo one another with regards to raising food specifically for your organization. So that was pretty fascinating to see.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without organizations like that really driving it home to help our neighbors in need.
So thank you. Appreciate your insight, and hopefully folks can go onto the website and look you up to see what they might be able to do to help out. Stay tuned. Our next guest in an upcoming show is Ben Johnston of Caputis. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. They are experts in small business loans, and I'm sure you're going to learn something from them on that topic. And in the meantime, thanks for joining us. Thanks to Mike and Nick and all of our listeners too.